right. Welcome to the first episode of the Children of Mars podcast. Today's topic is our top three men we would like to have sex with. I thought I would start this out with number three, AIDS Jared Leto from Dallas Buyers Club. At number two, we have Robert Plant from the 60s. And at number one, we have Elliot Page. Now, I'll pass it off to Eli, who had a little bit of contention with this topic. He actually wanted it to be a top 20 list. He said there were too many good choices, but we got him to whittle it down to a top 10, so I'll let you go.
Number 10, I have Jake Gyllenhaal
Okay.
from Spider-Man, the new one.
Yeah.
And because he's kind of, if I'm being completely honest, like seen Brokeback Mountain, right? Kind of gay. I'm not sure if I'm into that. Anyways, number 9, I have Tom Holland from Spider-Man. He's just pretty cute.
Yeah.
And
I would actually argue that the guy that played the Amazing Spider-Man is more attractive, but
Garfield.
Andrew
Yeah.
Garfield, I believe. Yeah. But to each his own.
Disagree. He's a worse actor too. Like
that is true. That is factual.
Yeah. So he's just just like less of a man. Anyways. Number 9, I have Samuel L. Jackson from Spider-Man.
From Spider-Man.
And in general. Samuel Jackson's
But you think that Spider-Man was his appearance in which he was the most attractive?
The new one. Yes. And then after that I'm gonna have to say Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr.
Okay.
From Sherlock Holmes. And then after that, I'm gonna have to say, this is so dumb, dude. After that, I'm gonna have to say, you're the one that
wanted a top 10 list.
Okay. After that, I'm gonna say,
you're just going over like
Simon Pegg from Hot Fuzz.
Okay.
And then Nick Frost from Shaun of the Dead.
Okay.
And then after that, I'm going to say, for my number one pick for the hottest. What was it?
Men we want to have sex with.
Men I want to have sex with.
Not necessarily the most attractive, but...
Okay. The number one man that I want to have sex with is Elon Musk. All right. Let's get this show started, shall we?
We did.
Okay. Our topic today is war. Yeah. So I was just reading on the subreddit, right? The only one that matters.
Could you please give some context to the situation?
Okay. All right. So our first let's see. Our first podcast was actually the implications of the GDZ or live stream, and that was regarding the streamer and internet personality Vaush.
And you can see him on the screen.
Okay, good. That's good, because he effectively occupies a significant role in the sort of cultural consciousness that we find ourselves in 2021.
Yes. Especially locally in Washington.
Interesting. I did not know that. Why do you think that is?
I think this place, at least the Pacific Northwest, Puget Sound sort of area, is definitely incredibly left-leaning. That is not to say parts of generally the eastern part of the state is much less so. But I've been finding, yeah, especially over the last 4 years, the just general consensus politically of at least the social groups that I participate in, as well as my family, have been shifting more to the left as time's gone on.
Right.
You see a lot of discontent with modern establishment Democrats, especially now that Joe Biden has been elected.
Yeah, I definitely have it due to our geographic area. It's sort of suburban, rare, barely rural, pretty much suburban, middle class, bordering on working class, um, like families, and there's been a lot of faith in the Democratic Party that seems to be withering to some extent. But that's a bigger issue that we're not actually going to
Yeah,
address because we're concerned with Vosh, who has grown to
yes, we
prominence
are.
for specifically in like a more of a younger market of gamers.
Yes.
There was a quiver in my voice when I said that. That was I noticed that. But they're they're taking a political action, right? They're like, I'm gonna educate myself as
Yes,
an
by
American
watching YouTube.
by listening to streamers talk about politics and argue about politics. And then I'm going to become an informed individual because I was able to play video games and listen to what's going on in the world at the current moment. And then that will inform me about the right decisions to make. Because I'll be making choices that affect the people that need to have their voices heard and the people that need these social policies or these political policies that will enable them to become their fullest selves. So it's sort of this idea that if I become informed enough with the points of social politics and social ideology through social media and through live streams and through just YouTube and how we consume media in general now, I can make the decisions that can affect the most people possible. And I think the idea of having a political democracy is to give the individual a voting power. So I will vote to have my vote represents me. So I'm voting to have my voice heard because the politics and the policies that are being enacted are going to affect me as an individual, me and my family. And so I want to best optimize my personal case. So all my political opinions are going to be based off of what I need as an individual and what I want to see going forward in the world, and or what I want to see going forward in the world for me as me and my family, and my community. And as soon as you plug yourself into this greater movement, this collective identity, then your vote means something. Not It means barely anything for you now because all of your opinions and what you identify with as an individual is being absorbed into the greater movement of what is best for humanity or what is best for the oppressed peoples of our country or our culture. So it's interesting that that's sort of dissolving individual significance in the voting process. I think that's what's going on, so that you can stand up for the people that really need it while you play video games.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting premise. So
Yes.
I've been spending some time formulating an argument based on the idea of God as the primary orchestrator of events in reality. And it's interesting because that goes against the cultural narrative at the moment that humans are the orchestrators of reality, and so we as humans have to make things as good as possible, and we have to engineer our society to reflect the goodness in people. It's something like that,
Mm.
where I would say the goodness in people is a symptom of enabling the spirit of God, which is underneath. It's not found in the culture war. It's not found externally like that. It's not found in the satisfaction that comes from uh tweeting at some asshole on Twitter that
Yeah.
really pisses you off. That's like, oh, this fucking conservatard doesn't understand how the world works. I'm really gonna show him that the actual like improvement of the world comes deep from within yourself, and it's sort of like a Jordan Peterson message, but more based. So, anyways, I was on the Vosh subreddit, and I made my statement, and it has had very little response currently, but there was
Substantive
one
response.
substantive response. That's true. There's one thing that stuck out to me. So should I read my post? Sort of break it
Yes.
down from
Go
there.
ahead.
All right. Vosh has made a fundamental Vosh has made a fundamental mischaracterization about the nature of reality. This must be corrected. That's the same thing again. Vosh's interpretation of reality is an elaborate overcomplication of simple principles that bind all things. So he goes into like this politics video where he basically breaks down the substructure of reality in terms of his view of things, and it's put all very um what's the word, like sociology bullshit, and it's
Sort of
like, all right,
postmodern.
yeah, postmodern, and it's like, okay, you're wrong right there. It's way simpler than that, which seems kind of counterintuitive because people have been trying to figure this shit out for so fucking long, but it's actually really simple. And like once you get down to what actually makes up things in the world, you're like, oh damn, that's way too simple. We need intellectuals to overcomplicate the shit out of that so that we can feel good about playing video games
Yeah.
and listening to nonsense all day. Um, because of this, he is allowed to string together elaborate conceptions to advocate his moral basis while he sits in his room and plays video games. I seek to address his moral overcomplication and establish his views within the context of the light of God. In order to illuminate this characterization, we must begin first at the nature of reality. Properties are first and foremost bound by principles. So there are things in the world that only operate because they are connected or because they are strung together by like processes that make them present. So you have the laws of physics that we figured out, that we've mapped around to figure out that, okay, this suspends things in space-time. So principles are observed, discovered, or manifested. They are not invented. And so that goes from the principles that bind matter to reality, as well as the principles that bind social structures. So the structures that humans have developed are less of inventions, less of like creations, but more of discoveries of the most effective way of navigating the world. So if you think about cultures that have developed for thousands of years, there's a reason that they have some sort of axiom or some sort of substructure that they're sort of orbiting, right? So you look at certain ideas in certain cultures that are static, that they've had for an incomprehensibly long amount of time, that they orbit for a reason, because there's some truth in there that is transcendent, like generationally, right? It's real from it was real for your ancestors, and it is like real for you. And that's not because it was invented, that was because it was discovered. Like finding a place. Like no one invented North America, it was discovered.
Yes.
It was here, and then it was made
Like
it
the
was
metagame of any given competitive game for all you Vosh viewers out there,
care to explain that?
where the metagame is it's abbreviated as most effective tactic available, but what it actually means is the sort of conceptual understanding of the players making observations about the game and the optimal way to play it in order to get an edge on people who might not follow it.
Oh, okay. Wow. It's like another it's a level that has always existed, but it is a level that you are accessing now.
Yeah.
And then as you are accessing that higher or lower level, that within the context of someone who is not at that level is to your advantage. That makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
man. That's cool. All right. So greetings, Program Crypt. I see you have entered the chat.
Greetings, Ewomp. Greetings, Max Moss.
You can just say our names.
Damn.
Which are
I'm
Ewomp
trying to
and
get
Max
fucking
Moss.
doxed by Vosh viewers.
That's alright.
Anyway.
I could beat any of them up.
Yeah.
This is a challenge.
Yeah. All right.
Look for my post on the subreddit coming soon.
Okay. So
Go ahead.
All right. So properties are first and foremost bound by principles. Principles are observed, discovered, or manifested. They are not invented. Any principle that seems to work is a discovery of a self-evident truth. So the world is composed of truth, and then as you go into it, you discover more and more of that truth. And so if you live a long time, that is, if you are identifying with something that has lived a long time, like a culture or a religion or a spiritual pattern that has developed over time, that's if it's really, really old and it's really true and it's speech through you, then that means it's like higher. It's like more. It's a stronger principle.
You're sort of adopting that pool of accumulated wisdom for yourself. Sort of a shortcut.
Yeah. So the will is the fundamental currency of reality. All right, that is the biggest thing, because you can totally like relativize everything and be like, well, atoms are the fundamental currency of reality, but then quantum mechanics is like, fuck you, that's there's shit that's lower than that, right? There's or like particle physics is like there's all this other shit below that. but you go down far enough and it's the will. So all things are composed of the will acts out through the permission of its principles. So that's like things act through systems. That's pretty self-evident. It's like the principle is the structure, and then the will speaks through the structure to move itself. That's how you have particles. That's how you have things. The instinct of the will is to transcend its boundaries, which establishes new ones. So each time something expands, that sets a new precedent, right? That sets a new standard that it has to maintain, because or else it'll just collapse in on itself again. So that just builds itself into reality, and then that becomes its new reality, and then that's how you have growth. So reality is always thus a twofold structure. A body is bound by principles to give it shape, that is, to allow things to make sense whatsoever. The firmament of reality is given shape by the activity of properties onto it. This is why we have bones and ligaments and ideas. So you have the will, which is sort of growing into the structure of principles. So it's like on one level you have the will, which is fixed until it is given body by the principles that hold things into being. It holds things in being. It like maintains them. It protects them. It's like a protective shell. And in certain cases with living things, and then there's the will that grows it in the center of it. So the body, then this is where it gets interpretive, kind of. I mean, it's all interpretive. That was a redundant statement. The body of reality is feminine. The binding principles are masculine. These are the mother and father of eternity, considered plainly as the Virgin Mother and God the Father, or, of course, iterated in every other variation of divine unity in any culture ever, except for our modern society, which is quickly dispensing of the duality. So basically the idea is that the growing force is feminine and the protective force is masculine. So the growing, cultivating force is like emotion, and then the skin, the protective or cutting force, is like rationalism or like a masculine authority, and then you have some sort of like internal cultivation that grows in and maintains the organs, and then that is feminine. So you have that two form structure from the fundamental basis of reality becoming a hard thing, a hard unit of reality, a unit of mass that can go out and experience things through these two fundamental this fundamental interplay of reality. And then, of course, our modern society is quickly like dispensing of this idea with the blurring of like gender lines and that sort of thing, is being like, oh, your nature is, you can sort of modify your nature and get rid of it and tweak it and do whatever you want with it, or whatever makes you feel a certain way, which is interesting, but I don't really get into that too much. All form is reordering itself back into the image of God by the aims of these divine creators, through the unification of this duality, whether you believe in it or not. I'm going to read that again. All form is reordering itself back into the image of God by the aims of these divine creators, whether you believe in it or not. You will either be crushed by it, or it will crush those that do not bind to it. You will either be crushed by it, or you will crush those that do not bind to it. This is the nature of true morality. That is how to properly act and judge others. So, what do you think of that?
That sounds like a
I have
jihad,
a lot of issues with that second to last
And-
paragraph.
I am all for it.
What's that?
A
What are the
jihad?
issues?
What's the paragraph?
The one you just read about.
All form is reordering itself back into the image of God. Starting there or starting before that?
Starting at the body of reality is feminine and ending at the end of that whole thing.
Okay. All right.
You have an issue with the
I
genderization of it?
Sorry, what was that? The generalization?
The genderization of it.
Oh. Yeah, that's one of the issues I have with it.
Okay. It's not gendering anything because masculine and feminine are not genders.
Well,
first thing I'd like
I
to
would
say.
agree that your concepts of just like a more I guess assertive, rational versus how would you define the other one again?
Emotional versus rational.
Okay. Well, I just don't see. I wouldn't call those masculine and feminine. I would call those emotional and rational. I don't see why you would then call that feminine masculine.
Okay.
Also,
okay.
I would be curious how you would define emotional, because I feel like that's a very subjective, human-centric idea.
So I would say emotionalism and rationalism are components of masculine and feminine, but the masculine and feminine views are not simply considered emotional or rational. It's like it's a component of it. There's different terms you could use like logos and eros, but the essential idea is that you have one force for nurturing and the other force for killing. It's pretty much that. So when you are taking care of your body, you are nurturing it, whereas when you are going out into the world and killing things or making sure nothing kills you and confronting like physical things, that's that force that you are acting along, that sort of axiom of being is masculine. You are exerting the masculine spirit that you can trace back to the like fundamental nature of how reality is structured. As I have said, reality is always a twofold structure. A body is bound by principles to give it shape. So you have the body, which is sort of like the will, that is bound by the principles of reality, the structuring principles, to give it form, to give it skin. So you have the nurturing. Nurturing is an emotional instinct, and then killing is a rational one.
Okay, so I see the duality of, I mean, I would define it as like destruction versus creation as opposed to nurturing and killing, but in that way I can see the duality. I don't see why rational versus emotional wouldn't be connected to that in one way or the other. I think you could attribute either one to. I mean, you could attribute creation to emotional or rational, and you can contribute destruction to emotional or rational. I don't think there's a.
You separate the ideas from how I use the terms nurturing and killing.
Well, like what my mind thinks of when you
creation and
say that
destruction.
is like I mean, I always go to like scientific concepts, so I think of like entropy.
Go on.
Go on with what? Like describe entropy or
Yeah.
Well, I know what you mean when you say entropy. So I think the duality that I am drawing isn't necessarily creation and destruction, because those can both be forces that I would argue that both creation and destruction require the alignment of masculine and feminine forces. So creation and destruction is like action, whereas masculine and feminine is instinct. Creation and destruction is like that can be very formulated and can be expressed in many different ways, but masculine and feminine are always they're sort of eternal. So is creation and destruction.
So you're saying that like creation and destruction in your mind are sort of derived from nurture and killing?
Nurture and I don't know if killing is the right word, because you can kill someone out of an emotional possession. So like hunting or war.
Okay.
Nurturing
but you would derive
war.
those from creation and destruction or reverse that. You view that creation and destruction are derived from those.
Yeah.
Okay, because I would view it the reverse way. But okay.
Oh, that's interesting. So I would say that creation and destruction is the objective result of masculine and feminine instincts. So creation isn't an instinct. You don't have the instinct to create necessarily, and then it gets into definitions, because the idea of creating things is complicated. That's a really complicated one. And then destroying things as well. But the way that I look at creation and destruction is I would say that those two are results. They're results of the instincts. So you have the masculine instinct, which is designed around protection. Because if you just look at survival, right? Destruction isn't necessarily required for survival, but it is a symptom of trying to survive. That sounds like the most minor distinction, like most insignificant distinction that you could make, but it's like the splitting hairs of our arguments.
Well, I think I could. Well, I think that one of the biggest fundamental differences in our worldviews is that, or at least in what we're talking about now, although I think probably in general, is that I think you tend to view, and correct me if I'm wrong, but view the world through a very human-centric lens, where you kind of view meaning, or the most fundamental meaning, as coming from humans, or at least life. Whereas I don't. I think of life and human concepts as very emergent properties from a more fundamental universe that doesn't have either of those things intrinsically.
Okay. Yes, kind of. Yes. So I am tracing the emergence of human instincts to their fundamental nature. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to say, all right, what is the origin point of these instincts? Because we're the most complex forces of action that we are aware of in terms of processing our world, the world around us, and then turning it into things. So the reason that you can conceive of anything that is complex is because you have this unbelievably complex supercomputer in your head that is sort of reality itself reflected into itself and then figuring itself out. So it's like you have the whole instinct of existence, which is sort of outlined as I have the outline that I've given it, which you didn't seem to take issue with, the idea of principles being the skin, and then the will being the force underneath that the principle binds and shapes into something, into like a property, and then that property figures itself out, and then you have us, which we are the we are composed of the two forces that compose reality. And so figuring out the self from the human perspective, you figure out the parts, the acting parts of the universe that created us.
I don't really understand. Can you define will for me in your definition?
Okay, so it is inherently indefinable to some extent. It's like the acting force that you have inside of you that like gets you up and gets you to say things and that gets you to start making actions in the world. That's how I would consider the will, and it's identifiable purely as the force that activates action in the world. And then after the will acts, then your unconscious acts, and then everything else in your brain starts making the decisions about what that's going to look like, right? In the world.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I would say that's like the lowest level of reality, because you as a human being are composed of the lowest levels of reality acting to make you. So you are like the lowest levels of reality given a voice, and that's what I would say the will is. And so all the particles, everything that makes up your room that you're in right now is all these like wills that are just trying to hold themselves together and maintain cohesion.
So would you disagree with the statement or idea that the will, your idea of the will, is just the laws of physics? Or like, maybe I should say the forces in physics, like gravity, electromagnetism, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force.
I would argue that those are expressions of the will that we have come to be able to like observe and measure. Yes. So yeah, the yes is in reference to what I just stated.
Okay. Because okay. Because I would phrase it differently, but if that was your idea that those types of forces are like the will of reality, then I could agree with that.
So
to some extent.
So what I described in my post on the Vosh subreddit is that the will is sort of formed into properties by another force acting on it, a divine force, because I would say that it is divine because it is eternal and communicates with you. So that would be the masculine force. So the will is sort of like the the breath, the pneuma, the like vital spirit, and then the it's like formed into something by principles, like gravity and like all those fancy physics terms that you used. It's giving it like shape. So that could be a reduction. Could very well be a reduction, but I do know that both sides compose like one experience, right? And then we evolved to have that make the most sense in our biology and our neurochemistry, like the way that our brains are structured. We have two halves of our brain to make sense of two like, god damn it, man, it's the duality of reality. So has things make sense in twos that correlates to the reality, to the morality idea, because all form is reordering itself along these narratives of gods in the sense of eternal beings as masculine and feminine that are structuring themselves in the world. So you're participating in them because they're composed of so many things to make you right now moving towards whatever you're moving towards, and then also participating in me, and then also participating in Vosh, and then also participating in every other person that is represented within some sort of group or community or society. And then they're all moving towards the infinite, toward Ragnarok, toward the whatever is gonna happen next. So it's like you're a participant along this this giant monolithic structure that is abstract, sort of. It is only abstract in the human relationship to it, but it's like real. It's completely real because everyone is acting it out, and everything, every object in the world is acting it out. So anyways, this gets to like the morality of Vosh. The distinction then between Vosh's morality and a true morality is Vosh and his audience are debilitatingly disconnected from the fundamental nature of things. Perhaps Vosh works in a homeless shelter on the front lines of poverty, contributing to the cultivation of the noble spirit, but somehow I highly doubt this is the case. So where then is the individual to discover true morality? In war, at least inhabiting the underlying nature of it. This is not in the comfort of one's computer chair behind a screen, stimulating one with video games and social ideology. War is compassion balanced with steady conflict against unpleasant forces. War generates true morality, which obliterates glass castles that armchair intellectuals like to construct for themselves. So we come to the idea of there is a true morality that is composed out of gods. Where do you find that, and what does that look like? And the most revealing place that seems to be is through conflict, because conflict requires you to generate the most amount of yourself possible. Can I read one of the comments I got?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You should.
So,
yeah.
So, a god which permits any form of war is unequivocally evil and unworthy of our worship. Additionally, a god which created the conditions of the universe such as that the only way its inhabitants could achieve true morality is through the bloodshed and obliteration of other thinking, feeling beings, then that god is more than evil. They are the greatest demonstration of that which we must destroy and overcome, and their twisted morality should never concern us anyway. That comment is crazy, man. It's interesting because it's like for one, it's like it's very emotional, right? It's super emotionally invested that that war is the destruction of human life, and human life is sacred. And then it goes on to say that we need to transcend the evil god that is the evil god of like instinct, right? Because that's what I'm arguing. I'm arguing for instinct. And then he's like, oh, but that god is evil, and we need to destroy and overcome that god. And that's like transhumanism, right? So it's this this idea of being possessed by your emotions and then transcending the instinctual, like natural state of things. I just thought that was like a great example, and it's the only one. It's like the only actual like legit comment that anyone made. And to this, I commented, "Your post is overburdened with emotional thinking. I respect where it originates. I agree that the end result of war is the abject obliteration of life." That's important to acknowledge, because war it's the destructive force. However, it is the only through this combat state that life may be optimized to continue. We shed the blood of thinking, feeling beings to feed ourselves through the hunt, which is older than human consciousness. This is the sharp end of the sword of life. I would like to correct you and say we should not worship the military-industrial complex, which I assume we agree on. However, to worship war and the sacrifice of life in its own right is to become in touch with your nature.
Yeah, it sort of transcending that sort of just defeats the whole purpose of Darwinism and like finding your niche in nature, where you need conflict to develop things that you're good at. Your body isn't going to improve at all if it's not under stress, whether it's emotionally, mentally, or physically. You need, because your body responds generally pretty well to stress, whether it's like working out or even in the case of trauma, where you'll build up defense mechanisms in your brain that are there to protect you. Like the most basic sort of benign example of that is the ego, where let's say you're interested in someone romantically and they shut you down, and you start to rationalize it after the fact, saying like sour grapes, like I didn't really want them anyway, things like that, where it's all things to sort of protect your conception of yourself, at least when it comes to emotionally and mentally. It's just your like sort of basic state is thriving through conflict.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up those like emotional like walls, or those emotional like shields that people can develop, because that's it's a really fragile like a place that as soon as you disrupt that, it's like war. It's like, oh man, gotta protect the feelings, or gotta like rationalize,
Yeah,
gotta justify it.
that's like, yeah, that's why therapists are a thing, because it takes like a lot of really delicate work to like break down those mechanisms that were incredibly helpful, let's say when trauma was happening to you, when you were being traumatized, but it's sort of it just doesn't help being a functional person.
Hmm.
And it's not like, and like the breaking down of it is by no means like easy or peaceful. Like it almost always involves like an extremely large amount of crying and like pain, but it's all for the better, because then your brain starts to develop these more healthy thought processes that just make you more functional. It's like how work it's just like working out, right? Where if you work out and your body's used to being inactive and you start to work out, it fucking sucks, right?
Yeah.
If you're not in shape for running, then when you start running for like 2 3 minutes, it just feels terrible and you want to quit. But the next time you do it, you'll run for 3 or 4 minutes and then it'll feel awful and then you want to quit. And then you can keep going from there. And it's just your body and just your entire vessel is just super well optimized for conflict and responding to it and thriving in it.
It's because that's the like the basic nature of things. The
Life.
basic nature of reality is that if you are going to be alive, you're going to have to like face the wall, just face the the cold, unforgiving nature. I remember the first time I went to the grocery store, like by myself in my own car. I was like 15 or whatever, right? I'm like, holy shit, man! Like, no one fucking cares about me.
Yep.
No one cares about you, right? Like, you get a job, you have a fucking boss, and they're like telling you what to do, and you're like just doing the thing that you're supposed to do, and then that's like your armor against the infinite. It's like, well, at least I'm making pizza.
Just routines and stuff.
Yeah, just fitting yourself into the organism, and then it works. It does its thing, and then it keeps you safe because there's walls on either side of you, and you can like stay in that space for like only like a limited amount of time. Like even if you live with your parents for the rest of your fucking life, like they're going to die, and then what are you gonna do? You know, it's like dependency only goes so far, and then you're gonna have to face the infinite at some point. Just confront it and then start building shit, or like discovering like what you are a part of. And that's the God idea, is the biggest thing that you are a part of. And it's not just the void. God isn't the void. There's a point, there's a reason that there's all these things that are working as hard as they fucking can. It's like there's a reason for that. There's a reason that that you could participate in that elaborate, complex like dream, is because it's not just bullshit. It's like the realest fight. It's the realest confrontation that you can make without just getting swallowed up.
And that sort of comes around to sort of the main message of what we're trying to do here, which is, at least to my understanding, training yourself to thrive in conflict and bettering yourself with every action that you do, and being cognizant of the way you spend your time mostly, because at least in the way we exist, we don't have all of time to get things figured out. We have an incredibly limited amount of time, and our body deals with that limited amount of time by being incredibly adaptable. But the way I don't really want to say society is structured, but I will say that is sort of antithetical to that, and it disincentivizes that. Just incentivizes you to work so you can sustain just like the bare minimum and eat shit and watch YouTube videos and play video games and just occupy your time with just degenerative stuff. Which is not to say that it's a bad thing, be just entertainment in general. There's a lot of value that you can get out of entertainment, but you come up to a valley pretty quickly because it's not meant to sustain like a steady slope of improvement. It's intended to keep your attention and just spend your time here.
Yeah, man. I see that in, I don't want to name drop anyone, but I see that in people that are related to me, that are older than me, that fall into that valley where it's like you work and then you come home and then your brain naturally, instinctually falls into that routine, that system, that machine, so to speak, because you can bet like everything you've got that those things that entertain you are just are composing this like fast machine that is working as hard as it fucking can to exploit you, because it doesn't give a shit about you. It gives a shit about its creation because it's trying to get closer to its like most effective, most like self-driven.
It's built to sustain itself.
Yeah, and then it is just eating you up from the inside. It's like and then what happens then is you just become shallower every single day. Like it's a slow burn, right? Because you feel good and you feel good in the present moment. But then day after fucking day after fucking day, it just eats you out from the inside until you are nothing. That's terrifying, man. That's the worst. That's pretty close to the worst fucking life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, oh man.
I think it definitely gets more difficult to break out of something like that the longer you're in it, and also
Absolutely.
the older you get and the more kind of fixed of a mindset you have.
Yeah, the less malleable you are.
Yeah.
which is why you should take advantage of your youth. You're probably young if you're watching this. You're probably a
Fucking no one's
gamer.
watching this.
I see you, you little gamer.
Big Fong Fig, the big long fig on Reddit. That's who's watching this right now.
We'll start private messaging Reddit users our content.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the most present philosophical like dilemma, like a spiritual dilemma that our society, that our generation faces.
Why do you think that infrastructure is in place?
Capitalism.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
but it's like, what do you do about that? Do you just leave? Do you just leave the United States? It's kind of a cop out.
You can
Have
tune out.
roots here.
You can tune out of the machine. You can take steps to retune your ego and your unconscious, and it's really hard. It's really hard because keeps pulling you. It's always going to keep pulling
Definitely.
you. But that's the war. That's the war.
Yeah.
That's the war. It's like just going inside of yourself and readjusting some things, being like, all right, what matters here? What's going on? What's
Yep.
really going on here? All right. And
you
then
have to be
you
super mindful of it.
and then you and then you go into that state of mind. And I think psychedelics can like reaffirm certain patterns, and just drugs in general, like cannabis. If you have the seed, if you don't, it's just gonna, like, cannabis is just gonna fucking
It's just
put
gonna
you
be
back
like
in your
hedonism.
chair. Yeah, you could just be like, damn, I really like this feeling that I get. I really like the way that things look.
Yeah.
Wow, things look really pretty when I'm fucking stoned. I'm just gonna do this all the time.
Yeah.
I think that even if you don't have, like as you're saying it, like the seed, certain things like that, especially more intense, like LSD or shrooms or whatever, I think that they can not necessarily, but can definitely help one to gain that through introspection, through forced
Yeah,
introspection.
it can force introspection on you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And like even with like marijuana, I mean, like it,
oh, definitely.
like anxiety you get from it, that totally,
without a doubt,
makes you,
definitely.
It's like, oh, this matters way more than you're acting like right now.
Yeah.
That's what I get from like from weed. It's like the fascination, especially like sativa, just that fascination of, oh shit, there goes my fucking job. God damn it. The fascination that you get from things like novel things that you just completely forget about because you're an asshole in day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And then you're like, God damn it, that's like that's real. That's a real thing that makes itself known. It's like and just menial things, but they're not menial, and you know they're not menial, but your dumbass sober brain like treats them like they're menial. And then that pulls you closer to the things that actually fucking matter in your life, because like everything matters. There's things that matter a lot more than video games.